Hey everyone, this is Kason with SOLIDS 3D Printing. We're a additive manufacturing service bureau in Houston, and one of the best parts about what we do is the fact that we get to work with entrepreneurs. We get to see a lot of new products and new innovations that are coming onto the scene. And a lot of times we'd love to be able to share that more, and that's exactly what we're trying to do here. So, yeah, basically, we just want to have a casual conversation with some of our customers that are willing to share what they're doing. And today we have Mr. Terry Harman with Buckrail. And yeah, we're just learning about his business and some of the things that have got him to where he is. And we hope that it can be helpful to other people that are interested in entrepreneurship as well. So without further ado, Terry, one, thanks for coming in today. And
My
two,
pleasure.
thanks for being a great customer.
Yes, sir.
I wonder if we could just start with kind of just an introduction about yourself and where you're from.
Sure. Well, my company, Buckrail, we are a designer manufacturer for air gun parts and accessories. Essentially, we're a niche within a niche. You already have the a small market with air guns, and then an even smaller market with additive manufactured accessories. But yeah, the niche has been good, and it's been really cool and been a great opportunity to do all kind of all the stuff that I enjoy doing. Started out as a hobby and turned into a business without me really having you know any vision in mind other than just doing what I'm enjoying and sharing it with other people, and it kind of just spiraled into a business. So
That's awesome. So you from Houston?
I'm from Houston. I was born in Houma, Louisiana, but kind of grew up in this area before moving out to East Texas. But this is home. This is where family is.
Gotcha. So you mentioned family. Are you married? Do you have any kids, or how's that life?
Yes, sir. Married 15 years. I have 6 kids. I'm a junior, the youngest of 6. So I like to say I'm living up to my name. I have 6 kids, 3 boys, 3 girls, just like my dad. So yeah, big family. That's kind of been really a big part of this business and everything, as I'm sure we'll talk about it.
Yeah, for sure. That's one of the things I think most people don't realize when they're starting off how much the people around you influence what you're able to do and having
No
a good
doubt.
support system. So yeah, maybe
No
we'll
doubt.
touch on that a little bit more. So what's your background? Are you an engineer, or what kind of previous work history before you got into working or developing book reps?
Sure. So, yeah, kind of a diverse background for sure. I joke about being kind of a hillbilly engineer, because all my engineering skills are from YouTube. So, fortunately, we're in the age of information where you can be a YouTube engineer now. So that's been pretty cool. It's kind of taken me all over the place. But no, starting out, I mean, I had a high school education, terrible government education that really didn't do me not much good, but went into the Air Force as a kind of a lost boy. Discovered discipline and a lot of things that were really helpful to me. But I was engaged in a career that was really did not have any sort of civilian translation. As a in-flight refueler on board a KC-135, I deployed a lot for the first 3 years of my son's life. He barely knew me. We have to get to know one another all over again every time I come home. So I just did my one tour, got out, started all over again.
Yeah.
And so yeah, there was a company that was kind of willing to take pity on me. And I had an in through my brother who worked there as an oil and gas company. And yeah, I started out there just like as a tech, helping it, trying to stay busy. And little by little, just took on all the responsibility I could, and love learning, somehow anything that came through there, I would try to learn something about it, try to make myself useful. And little by little, I started to fall into welding a bit, which was my dad's profession. And yeah, they kind of had a little project and bought a MIG machine and had me framing up some steel frames for some control cabins on these mobile decoking units. And I was just going to frame that up, and then they were going to send it off to a company to finish it out. And that went so well, they were like, hey, well, maybe you can do this and maybe you can do that. And just until eventually it was me and my brother with our own, giant facility, doing all kind of research and development and making machines that were patented and that were, kind of came from my brother's head. He had the vision, and I kind of executed on his vision and learned a ton, about
And you
all
said that
kinds of
was
stuff.
in the oil and gas industry?
That was oil and gas. So yeah, that was a decoking company, another kind of a niche thing, and where they basically would go into refineries and remove the coke a byproduct from furnaces, a byproduct of refining oil. It's kind of like coal, and it just builds up on the pipes, and it constricts and constricts and constricts to the point to where it's no longer an efficient process and not safe, and they have to shut down. And they have these giant machines that, if you see one going down the road, it'll stand out to you. It's a sight to behold for
Yeah.
sure. But anyways, yeah, these they have to be able to go down the road, pull into the refinery. It's basically like a fire truck that, but they use the water to pump a urethane foam pig with tungsten carbide appendages that scrape the inside of these furnace tubes. It's really interesting process. But we would build the equipment that does that. So these are $3 million machines that go down the road with a tractor, weigh up almost 90,000 pounds, from the ground up. And just me and my brother, I mean, with a grinder and a welding machine, man, like,
Yeah.
doing electronics and, pneumatics, hydraulics, centrifugal pumps and tanks and control cabins, all of that stuff, So that was a huge, experience for me, getting to, learn all of those diverse processes and everything, and all the different elements of manufacturing. But when I started this company, I still thought you could put a half-inch pin in a half-inch hole. So,
Tolerances.
yeah, so I had a lot to learn even still. But yeah,
Yeah.
that was 9 years before I moved over into the aerospace industry. I loved working at that company, and the owner passed away, and we were kind of research and development, and so it started to get a little tight, a little uncomfortable for us, and we both
Yeah.
went our separate ways, started our own businesses as well. And this was Buck Rail was kind of a side hustle at the time,
Mhm.
and then I went into aerospace, and that was, unbelievably, like, just a huge blessing. After 9 years in the oil and gas industry, kind of rough, and
Yep. A little
cutthroat and
gritty.
everything. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And then to go to the aerospace environment where all the people that are there like really love their job and they want to be there and are treated like adults. You don't have anybody driving you and everything. They're super, just into what they're doing, and
Right.
and then it's just a really nice and soft environment, like, for lack of better words. It's kind of a good place for millennials, and
Yeah.
it's or for it's kind of like you can not be very, you can be very sensitive, not very tough, and but if you're smart, skillful, and everything, work hard, you'll do fine there. But for me, it was like just so comfortable, so awesome, such a nice environment to work in and everything, and we got to design stuff for the spacesuit, the next generation spacesuit.
Oh,
So
wow.
we're on a Johnson Space Center, like, science and engineering technology contract, and I did some design work. That was another self-taught thing. I watched YouTube videos how to use Creo, which was the modeling program they were using for designing the spacesuit and all that. And but yeah, did a lot of the work on the display and control unit for the next generation spacesuit. So, like, the temperature control valve knobs and the pressure gauge and whatever. Went there probably the least educated, doing design work at that company. Most companies will sort of trade, I guess, experience for an education. Well, the job application was actually the opposite. They say, "Hey, no problem if you don't have the experience. We'll
Yeah.
we'll take education." So there's a big emphasis on that. So I think they had to make waivers to get me hired and everything. And but yeah, made myself useful real quick and got in there, and then that was a whole tolerances. You want to be useful in aerospace. Learn about holes, man.
Yeah.
Holes, and O-ring. Like, that's a whole. You could be extremely worth your weight in gold if you know everything there is to know about holes and O-rings. So
I mean, pretty diverse career, starting off in the Air Force, going into oil and gas, and I could definitely relate to I would say the differences in the environments of different industries. Being in additive manufacturing, we kind of get a little bit of exposure to a lot of industries, and each one has its own little personality
yeah, for sure.
to many degrees. But so going back to the Air Force, is there any skills that you learned there that you feel like translated all the way through those other careers?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely could have made better use of my time in the Air Force. I was such a like just a foolish kid. I did not make the best use of my youth for sure, and really lacked discipline. And so that was for me personally the most major, I think, learning experience in the military was just regarding discipline and toughness. Like, really just having to, do hard things
Yeah.
and have a good attitude about it. I had rendered my body over to the United States government. Whatever they tell me to do, I have to do it. Doesn't matter how hard it is. And but yeah, being able to figure out how to do that you really have to be disciplined and you have to be tough. And so yeah, and that's translated a lot into business. You got to be tough, to do business, to do it well.
Absolutely.
Like there are so many solutions that are simple, not necessarily complicated. It's just hard. You don't want to do it, is the
Yep.
truth. And so being able to not only know the solution, which is easy, that's the easy part. It's a lot of times simple, but then be able to actually do it, the hard things that you have to do. And that's the biggest takeaway probably for me from the Air Force, just learning that discipline and everything. I had it really good in the Air Force, apart from being gone a lot. And yeah, sometimes I look back and think, man, if I'd be retiring soon, if if I had stayed in, but
Yeah.
young, I got a lot of good things out of it for sure. It was awesome.
Yeah, I can definitely relate. There's a lot of times where I just think back to other challenges I've been through, and I use that as a relative benchmark to what I'm going through now. And I think, okay,
Yeah,
hey, this is not fun, this is hard, but I've also been through other things that are not fun and hard. Been through that, I can go through this, take the
no
lessons
doubt,
learned, and then continue kind of climb that mountain there.
no doubt.
So that's very cool. So Air Force into oil and gas into aerospace. So how'd you
Mm.
jump into the air rifle business?
Yeah. So yeah, this just started in my backyard. Being a dad, teaching my kids stuff,
Yeah,
and yeah, I remember as a kid, my dad had 6 kids, and my mom stayed home with us. So he had a tall, providing well for us, and so things were tight. I remember having a BB gun, and I don't know if you're familiar with this, but there's these little. It was like it looked like a shotgun shell full of B. Has
yeah,
like 100
yeah.
BBs in it or something like that, right? And so I'd get one of those little cardboard packages of BBs, and I would shoot them all. And then I'd be out and not be able to shoot my air gun again for a while. And so I grew up thinking, wow, like when I'm an adult, I'm gonna have all the BBs,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah, shooting air guns all the time. I think my kids are gonna be the same way. And it turns out things were really good for us, and really fortunate to provide well for my family. So they're not really wanting for anything, and so just finding whatever I could strike their interest,
Mhm.
and spend some time with them doing interesting things. Well, air guns actually, ended up being one of those things that a few of my kids really enjoyed as well. My oldest son, I started him out on a Red Ryder BB gun, and in my mind at the time, my knowledge of air guns was actually extremely limited, just so from what I knew as a boy, and then from what you see in big box stores and whatnot.
Yeah,
And I
absolutely.
had no idea at the time, which I'm sure we'll talk about this more later, that they're like air guns are not like whenever we were kids. Like I have air guns now you can kill Cape buffalo with. It's amazing. But that was a whole world, like an adult market, for air guns that I didn't know about. I thought it was just something that, good for kids. You shoot air guns when you're a kid, and kind of it's a good way to get familiar, with the principles of a firearm. Like before I went to the Air Force, my experience with firearms was extremely limited to like the rimfire, 22 maybe here and there, a little bit of shotguns when we moved out into the country, but for the most part, it was mostly air guns. But it was not uncomfortable for me at all to shoot an M16 and an M9 and qualified expert and everything, which isn't necessarily super impressive, but but having no background in firearms for sure,
Yeah,
guns really prepared me for that. And so that's the way I was thinking about it with my kids. I want my kids to know their way around a firearm, but we live in a little tight knit community. I'm not going to be shooting firearms in my backyard, and don't feel great about taking them to the range and everything. So yeah, air guns it was, and yeah, like I said, it was a little Red Ryder BB gun, which surely everybody who's listening to this is hopefully familiar with, is the most iconic air
oh
gun in
yeah,
the world by far. But anyways, that air gun is actually really not great for kids. I hate to say that. I know that some of my people are probably
yeah,
not going to be too happy to hear that, but it's got a damn 5 pound trigger. It's really hard to cock it and
yep.
everything,
Been there.
and so for the littlest kids, you want to get them started early. The Red Rider is not the best, but I love that gun for sure. And so my little daughter, my oldest son, he could shoot it. My little daughter, she wanted to shoot too, and so I bought an air gun that's kind of like the smaller version of the Red Ryder. It has a little bit shorter lop and everything, but it's still the same power plant, same trigger, just as hard to use really. She still had to like put it over her shoulder or under her armpit, essentially, to be able to look into the iron sights and everything. So anyways, it was so hard for her to shoot that it was discouraging for her. It wasn't really fun. She saw her big brother and everything, and I was just trying to think of a way to make it easier for her. And at that time, I was getting obsessed with 3D printing, like absolutely obsessed. It was like I was living in a sci-fi movie.
And what time frame is this?
Yeah, so this is when I was in oil and gas. This was I think maybe a couple of years before I went into aerospace. So I think this would have been around 2019.
Okay.
Yeah. So the process for me getting a 3D printer and then getting obsessed with 3D printing and everything to starting a business, that was like months.
I was gonna say, I'm looking at the timelines.
Yeah. It was just months, and I really and the bar was really low for me. I guess I'll get to that. I redirect me if you need to. I'll get distracted.
You're doing great.
But yeah, so really short time frame. I go from getting obsessed with 3D printing and 3D modeling. I had started out doing pencil drafting and whatnot. My dad was a draftsman as well, draftsman welder, kind of a Renaissance man, and I know he kind of passed that on to me and my brother. But anyways, so I moved from pencil drafting to kind of dreaming about CAD. Eventually break into AutoCAD and then 3D AutoCAD and really like brute force 3D modeling. It's like the Linux of 3D modeling, not parametric at all. And so but started trying to find ways where I can incorporate that in my own time. This was like what I was doing as a hobby. Learning AutoCAD, trying to find ways that we can incorporate that into our workflow in this oil and gas research and development facility, and then eventually, now I can make 3D models, and man, it would be cool if I could just.
So you mentioned Creo and AutoCAD. Do you still use those softwares? Or?
I love Creo, and it's an awesome engineering program, super powerful program. I'm not using that for this business because it's really not the right fit. Like a lot of the stuff that I'm doing is not not really engineering heavy.
It's more design modeling rather than like simulations.
Yeah, right.
So what do you use?
So I use Fusion 360. A big part of that too is just the price.
Cost.
Yeah, the price. I mean, just justifying the cost of Creo. It just didn't really make sense to us, and who knows, I might end up, switching to a program like SolidWorks or Creo, but right now Fusion 360 is plenty good for the stuff that I'm doing.
It's a similar story we've seen across the board. We use SolidWorks internally, but we also have Fusion 360. We're seeing more and more clients using Fusion 360. It just opens up the door. It used to be a barrier of entry for a lot of companies and even just aspiring engineers. So it's cool to see.
Yeah, I would think Fusion 360 is probably a really big part of like the maker movement, the additive manufacturing, and everything.
3D printer is only as good as the model.
Yeah,
and you got to have a good model for that.
No doubt
to turn out right. So
no doubt.
So it sounds like you were, kind of had your own personal, I guess, motivation. So like you be your own client. I think that's important in an entrepreneurship personally. So that was around 2019, you said?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
2019. And there was just one part that I came up with for my little daughter to shoot. I found a bipod that could like clamp to a 1-inch barrel or tube. I put that on there, and then I designed a scope mount that basically it just has these two little nubs that kind of hug onto the rear sight post, and then you can remove a little screw in the stock, and you slide this part in at an angle, and whenever you angle it down, the little nubs come up under the rear sight post and hold onto it in the front, and in the back you just remove the stock screw and reinstall it through that scope mount, and now you have a Picatinny rail on the on that air gun, and you can put a red dot on it. And so for a kid
that's learn.
Yeah. So for a kid trying to learn, you just put the dot on the target and pull the trigger. It's just one less thing they need to think about.
Right.
Some people are hardcore, like you start them on iron sights and everything, but when they're really, really young, you really want to start them out having fun and kind of
safe.
But then having but that sort of gratification, figuring out what it's all about, and then you can challenge them. Then you can start, doing some of the more advanced stuff, whatever. So red dot, that was, that really got her into shooting. She really enjoyed it after that, and it just made it so much easier for her to shoot and have fun with me and her big brother. And as soon as I made that, I thought, well, surely there's other folks that would want to use this thing, and so like an idiot, when I started the company, I called it Buck Rail because the air gun was called the Daisy Buck, and this was the Buck Rail. So if you
Okay.
Google Buck Rail, newspaper or media company in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, is what comes up. So
Uh-huh.
that's why it's Buck hyphen Rail. So I'm like violating all the marketing rules. I
Yeah.
didn't care though, really, because this was not going to be a business for me. This was just going to be, like some people do lemonade stands or whatever.
Yeah. This was a little side
This was
gig.
not a lemonade
Yeah.
stand. This for my kids. This was a 3D printing company for my kids. And my oldest son did the 3D printing. My little daughter would draw little pictures and write thank you notes. And
Right.
my wife would pack them up and ship them. And they make $5 like once a week or something like that. And we would all celebrate. Yeah, we got an
Yeah.
order when an order would come through. I started a website. That was all new to me. Learning how to make a website was not profitable at all, but that didn't matter. It was just like a fun little business lesson, and not only that, but just a way to sort of give something to the community, and to learn some things. And that was going to be it, though. That's why I called it Buck Rail. We're just going to sell one product, and I was just going to keep
Yeah.
plowing ahead in oil and gas, welding, machining, design, and whatnot, and then just little by little, it was like one order a week, and then eventually two.
So where were your customers coming from?
Yeah, that was really interesting. So that was an advantage I had when I started. There was people that were looking for that product. There are people who thought there should be a way to
Yeah.
put a scope on here.
If you got that problem, somebody else
Yeah,
probably
yeah,
has it as well.
right. So I didn't, I later I learned about search engine optimization and all that stuff, and that was all that's all really cool and useful and everything. But for my business, I was making products at first that people were looking for, so they'd find me, and just making sure that the website was something that Google felt good about, serving to people, making
Right.
sure that it was all clean and everything. Was a little bit of a challenge at first, but once I had that figured out, people were finding me, even from other countries and everything, which was unexpected. And even whenever we were just getting one order a week, it was
So you weren't on any platforms or any third parties. It's all 100% organic through your own website.
100%. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I had no idea how good I had it at first. I just thought, well, oh, okay. Yeah. This business thing is real easy, I guess, I didn't understand it really at the time, that no, these are kind of like pain points that no big company would try to address, because it wouldn't, it's not profit. It's not a big enough market, to really do that through traditional means. So yeah, the only really good option, if to make affordable, if you want to make it affordable, something that people buy, that gun is like $18. Nobody's going to pay a whole lot of money to put a optic on that or whatever. So yeah, but yeah, it just happened to be something that other folks were looking for, and they're finding me. And there were some like steps along the way where we gained some exposure and whatnot. There's a man in the industry who's been dubbed the godfather of air guns, Tom Gaylord, who is a huge air gun enthusiast and writes really in-depth articles, technical stuff. He's a storyteller and everything, and has been sort of a good sort of steward of the air gun industry. And I had sent Tom an email after reading a lot of his articles, asking if he'd be willing to review that little rail, and he basically sent me kind of a cantankerous little response and everything. He's an old head, and I I wasn't surprised, but he kind of a cantankerous response, saying, dismissive, and there's no money in it, and here's the problem with that, and everything.
Yeah.
And I kind of just respectfully told him off,
Yeah. Yeah.
well,
Respectfully disagree here.
yeah. Just it can kind of playfully, I joked with him a little bit, and I even added a GIF,
Yeah.
of a man like tipping his hat, and said good day, and just to like, I don't know why I was entertaining myself, I guess, and trying to recover my dignity maybe too at the same time.
Did that kind of motivate you?
Well, what happened is he respected that.
Yeah.
And he was like, this guy might actually be able to make this happen. He seems
Right.
persistent, and it seems like he's going to do this no matter what I say to him anyway. And that's probably what it's going to take. And that's exactly what he said to me. He responded to me and said, well, I think you got the stuff to make it happen. You seem persistent enough. Send it to me. And so I sent it to him, and I was not prepared for how in depth. I mean, he pulled out the calipers, took measurements to check it up against the Picatinny or
Yeah.
NATO or mil spec specs and everything. And and it happened to be right. I don't know how I got that right, not being very limited in my knowledge of any of that. And yeah, he put that article out there, and that really got us a lot of exposure, like relatively compared to where we were before.
Right.
And that's whenever business really, that was a dramatic like spike in business and everything. And there were major spikes along the way, sort of milestones and everything that we hit with certain products that really just took off, but much of our growth has been sort of organic. I think marketing is really, really interesting, and I would love to know more about it. It's just I'm finding less and less time to devote myself to, it's like I have to cut certain things off, and I don't. Right now, it'd be irresponsible for me to market too hard because I still want to stick around in our house for a bit, before we move into a shop and everything, and really push for growth. So we have a catalog now of over 100 parts, and if I really marketed hard, I probably wouldn't be able to keep up, and I'd kind of get unhealthy and everything. So.
And you've designed all 100 of those parts?
Yep. Yeah. There's not another company in the airgun industry, I don't believe, who's cranked out as much parts as we have in the last year or two.
So that's I think a good segue to the 3D printing aspect of it. So sounds like you were using a 3D printer early on.
Yeah.
And so up until this, I guess, part in the timeline, you're 3D printing all your own products?
For the most part, yes. There are some products that we're having machined, like just to solve certain, limitations, I guess, of 3D printed parts. So we would have some parts cut on the lathe and whatnot. And what's funny is I'm a machinist, and could have gone that direction. I just was much more excited about additive manufacturing and all the advantages and all the things you could do. Like I heard in that interview you did recently, where you're talking about the person who essentially maybe has or is too much of a proponent, not too much of a proponent, but basically too fixated on the advantages or benefits of additive manufacturing to where they're almost blinded to its limitations, and
Yes.
and not willing to to really honestly compare to injection molded parts and everything, and really do the hard work of that. And I'm definitely tempted in that direction for sure. Like I'm so passionate, so excited about additive manufacturing that I can almost forget that this might not be the best approach. And I've kind of had to like really make up my mind, like what do I really want to do, like what's my goal here. And really it's probably not the best thing for business short term, but long term I can see that additive manufacturing, the way it's advancing and everything, and all the opportunities it unlocks and all the advantages are so big to me that if a product makes the most sense to be injection molded and everything, maybe that product is for somebody else, and I'm going to figure out, I'm going to keep pressing with making the best use of additive manufacturing to do something that hasn't been done before. I mean, there's features like actually that part that's sitting on the bookshelf up there. There's basically these grip adapters that they need to be attached in the front and rear to really be tough, or you need to extend the part so long that the screw the one screw that's attaching it isn't out on the end, so you can get a lot of leverage on it and break it. And so that was kind of a challenge I was having with additive manufacturing. With additive manufacturing, I was able to put a feature in there. It's like a little slot where you take a button head screw, you slide it into that slot, and then when you go to install the part, you can put an Allen wrench through a small hole that just barely fits the Allen wrench, and you can install that screw in the rear. The reason that was necessary is because I had a grip rib for an AR, like a mil spec AR grip under there, and I couldn't put the screw in from the bottom. And so basically I made this feature that would be highly impractical with injection molded, maybe technically possible, but it's like a huge undercut. And essentially that's nothing for additive manufacturing. The part complexity and everything, doesn't necessarily add to the cost. And so had you guys, manufacture that part, and yeah, that's worked out great. And now I'm incorporating that into a whole bunch of, so basically if I pigeonhole myself to additive manufacturing, I can be forced to innovate,
yeah, I think that's what it was.
and
Yeah.
with additive manufacturing. And that's what I'm all about, is innovating. It's not, money, obviously, but you can't get very far in life without it. That's important and everything. And there's lots of other things that are important, but yeah, innovation is right there at the top. And I just see that there's just so much room for innovation, and it just hasn't been, you know, saturated all that much yet, and it's just now becoming really approachable,
Yeah.
to the average person. And so, yeah, I just want to get in early and just freaking get in there and know everything there is to know. Do stuff that if you're thinking traditional manufacturing, you would never do. There's another part it was a mechanism with basically a really simple cam lever, and the there was a part within a part, that could not be conventionally manufactured. It could only be done with additive manufacturing, and it solved some design challenges. And yeah, that was another one. I'm just gonna keep pressing,
Yeah.
keep pressing with additive manufacturing. So
That's awesome. I mean, I
yeah,
think it's what we've seen is one, people are designing for it now.
yeah,
We've been in the business for about a decade.
sure,
My quick background is oil and gas as well, and I
mm,
never intended to get into additive. It just kind of happened, also kind of not by accident, but
sure,
by circumstance. And my first exposure to 3D printer was actually considered a rapid prototyping machine. So people just saw this as a tool at the time, in 2008 timeframe, as just
yeah,
hey, this is good for prototyping. And fast forward, 10, 15 years, and now students are being exposed to 3D printers since they're in junior high.
right, yeah,
So
yeah,
these engineers that are coming out of college now, or coming into the industry, or being even just trade schools or classes in high school, they're seeing 3D printing. They're
yeah,
thinking about what it can do, and they're implementing those design features that they would have been taught to not implement
right,
through
right.
traditional manufacturing methods.
Yeah, it's a good thing and a bad thing. It's good for the additive for I guess we shouldn't be saying additive manufacturing space, because injection molding, there's other things too. But the 3D printing space, it's really good. But then what I saw in the aerospace industry is engineers coming out of school thinking you can do things, with traditional manufacturing methods that, they're still lagging with 3D printing.
Yeah,
But there are going to be 3D printed parts that go to the moon.
yeah, for
And
sure.
but it's new. The aerospace industry has been kind of slow to adopt 3D printing, and rightly so. But
But to take a step back, you also mentioned a little bit earlier about some of the limitations of 3D printing. So
right,
what do you consider some of those in your business?
yeah. I mean, I would say definitely part strength and cost. And well, not just that, but also your just scalability as well. You want to make thousands and thousands of a thing, whatever, yeah, 3D printing probably isn't the best. Obviously, I know you guys make thousands of parts, and I make thousands of parts a month.
Yeah,
3,000 plus a month, and could probably go even further. But if we're talking about one product that you sell thousands of a month or tens of thousands a year, yeah, additive manufacturing, unless it does something for you that injection molding couldn't do, like some of those design
design
features and
features.
everything
Yeah.
that you couldn't, do with traditional manufacturing methods. I would say, yeah, that's the major limitation. With injection molding, you can with a margin. I mean, I would say a relatively um, minor upfront investment for a mold. Like I said, relative $20,000. For a mold, you can produce parts for pennies.
Yeah.
Whereas, um, with injection molded, I'm sorry, with 3D printing parts, yeah, the advantage for me is I can do something that nobody else is willing to do.
Yeah.
The upfront investment is very small. I could design a product on Thursday, have it for sale on Monday. If nobody buys it, what did I lose? A few hours of design time. If I wanted to print a few initially just to have ready for a release and everything, whatever the material cost, it's negligible what I've lost really, and I gained knowledge or insight, and then realize, and then I'm just on to the next product.
Right.
You know.
So I love businesses like yours where you have so many SKUs. You mentioned 100 some odd products. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I think without 3D printing, that wouldn't be plausible.
Without a doubt. Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah, and like I said, I'm just one man, doing the design and manufacturing and all of that too. So I have to be able to be like really agile. I need to be able to, like, if somebody suggests something and I think, oh, hey, that sounds like a cool idea. I don't know how big of a market there is,
Yeah.
but I don't really need to worry too much about that. Unless I'm choosing between making this thing or that, that's when I'll be like, okay, yeah, I think there's a bigger market for this thing. So that's the next product. And then, yeah, literally, sometimes I will design something in 45 minutes to 2 hours, hit print on the 3D printer in my office, and then have that part in the evening. And then I'll have some changes already put in and iterate and wake up in the morning and have a finished part,
Yeah.
that fast. And so that's been huge for me. And then in the aerospace industry, we saw kind of the difference between these established companies, who have a lot of, I guess, for lack of better words, bureaucracy. They've been sued enough that, they've been dealing with, government contracts long enough to where there's, lots of processes and everything, which are there for good reason, of course. But then you have these new companies, these startups that are doing things wildly different, building something, pushing it till it breaks, learning something and iterating, doing that over and over and over again, where you have some of these other companies that have been, sort of paralyzed by analysis essentially for years. By the time they actually have something you can put your hands on, it's irrelevant, because of these other companies are just, especially in the private space sector, are just outpacing them so rapidly with that type of agile design approach.
We talk about that a lot with our engineering projects, because a lot of times, we can say, hey, we can sit here and stare at a computer for 3 or 4 hours with X amount of dollars associated with that engineering time.
Sure.
Or we can print it for $30
Mm-hmm.
and we can test the part to its limit and we'll know the answer.
No doubt.
So it's just, the cost and the ability to be accurate in doing that. Because that's the other thing is you can, if the part is not of equal strength to what your final production part is going to be, then your results there are not
right.
They don't correlate. So
no doubt. And obviously it depends on what you're doing too, right? Like if you're doing something where life and limb is on the line, without a doubt, do the analysis and everything, but just recognize, I guess, where there may be advantages without a great, without great risk. And that's a big thing, is like the amount of risk you're willing to take on. And a big part of it with the space industry, there's also sort of a public relations aspect and everything. It doesn't look real good to build something, to test it, and it blows up, or even if there was, you bought down risk really, really well, it's not a good look on your company and whatnot. And we're just now getting to where some companies are doing a good job of sort of doing that and still maintaining good public relations. You know what I mean?
SpaceX is a good example of that.
Yeah, SpaceX. That's what I had in mind. Yeah, SpaceX for sure.
They tell people that this is an iterative process, and they go quickly. So
and they say this is, hey, well, we learned a lot, and this was actually a success because we hit this benchmark and this milestone, and
but I get the psychological effect.
Yeah.
I just saw one of these rockets go up, and not make it back a few months prior.
Right. If I wanted to create like a propaganda video, I showed astronauts to convince them that
Exactly.
you would just do like a mashup of SpaceX stuff blowing up, right? And say one day you're going to be on that. How do you feel?
Psychologically that would be a challenge.
Yeah.
So taking a step back and trying to, you made a big jump from Buck Rail, the one product, and now you got 100 SKUs.
Sure.
So, how did you come about the need for each of these products? And what was the evolution there?
Sure. So that's been kind of one of the pain points for me, is that I'm kind of open with this. I'm not super enthusiastic about air guns necessarily. I was really had in mind, I don't really have much hobbies. If I have any hobbies, it's going to be like on Father's Day, we got our first parts from an SLS machine. To me, that's my hobby or my toy or whatever. My kids were all around me saying, whoa, while we were excavating the parts and all. So those are kind of my hobbies, are kind of things that I'm killing two birds with one stone. It's fun, and it also helps me to be a good provider, or it's edifying to me or to my children, or whatever, So air guns, I like air guns and I like guns and everything, but definitely wouldn't be putting a lot of my resources into having air guns as a hobby. It was more just something to do with my kids that I thought, would be good for them to get into, and then to just at an early age know how to get around a firearm responsibly. And I felt like, air guns were a good sort of, gateway, I guess, into that. And so I didn't even realize there's actually a really relatively big industry. Like I could probably for the rest of my life, try to meet all the needs of the airgun industry through Buck Rail and still have my work cut out for me at the end of it. So even though it's really niche, it's really small, sometimes it does make me a little envious of like companies that have a much bigger market, just because there'd be so much more room for innovation, so much more opportunities. But this is just kind of where I fell in. But that was kind of a pain point for me, was trying to get into the mind of the customer, and understand there's some things that people suggested to me early on where whenever I heard that, I just thought, like, why would you do that? Or like, and you would pay for that? You want that, huh? And I would kind of sit on it, and put it down on my list of things to revisit and everything. And the more and more I, tried to, this is now my business. So now I can't afford, to put time into the hobby, and really try to learn everything I can, not only about the industry, but, about my type of customer and everything by, doing the things they do, as a hobby. And then something would occur to me, oh man, it'd be nice as if, you had a this or that,
Yeah.
on this thing. And then it would hit me, oh yeah, somebody suggested that to me like 2 years ago,
Yeah.
and they were on to something. And, or maybe not 2 years ago, a few months ago. And then I kind of got used to, okay, the customers, they know, and I need to listen to them. Even if it sounds foreign to me, I really need to consider it. And the good thing about additive manufacturing is, yeah, or sorry, 3D printing is I can, and if it doesn't sell, big deal. I move on to the next thing. So that's been really good. And a lot of times the customers are right, of course. If there's one person, reaching out to me with this idea, if a handful of people, 3, 4, 5 people suggest the same thing, well, there's probably a very decent market for that, that item. So if it can be done, I'll do it. And a lot of times it's really simple. It's not necessarily that it's really hard. It's just no one else would do it, or it's not necessarily super innovative. It's just that this product doesn't exist, and there's just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of air guns. A lot of times the big companies are making products for the most popular or the best selling or whatever is doing whatever there's the biggest market around right now. And so I can kind of get all that low hanging fruit, that's
Yeah.
been.
Personally think that the bigger your market is, the less passionate it becomes, though.
Yeah.
And whereas the smaller markets are typically they're there for a reason. Those people are passionate about whatever that is.
Yeah, it's almost like a which one came. Yeah,
Sure.
you know what I mean? Like you might have had to been a little bit nuts, right, to do it in the
Yeah.
first place. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So
For
maybe
sure.
so maybe that came before the product or the market or whatever. Like you just had a crazy idea. I mean, it was like that for my business. Even my family is they're super supportive. My brother that I work with in the oil and gas industry, he's poured into me so much, and I learned so much from him. He learned a lot of things the hard way, and I got to learn it the easy way just from him.
Yeah.
And so, but yeah, he's been kind of a major impact on me for sure. But even he kind of didn't get it, and he admits that. Like basically at first, I would tell him what I'm doing, and he'd be like, now what you should do is something that you're not doing. I tell people what I'm doing, and they'd say, like airsoft.
Yeah.
Airsoft, yeah, everybody knows about airsoft. I'm like, air, what's that? BB guns, what BB guns are? Yeah, but not BB guns,
Yeah.
but yeah, BB guns, I guess. But anyways, there's a lot of folks just don't get it. You tell them you're working, I'm on a NASA contract making parts for the spacesuit. Everybody's like, wow,
Oh,
so
that's cool.
interesting,
Yeah.
so cool, and so honorable or whatever. Wow. Want to tell their kids, hey, this guy works on spacesuit. Tell them you're making parts for air guns. They're like, interesting. Moving on. So I got that even from my own family and everything. So that can, if you're not careful, I'm pretty sensitive guy. Like I kind of rely on encouragement for, all kinds of sources wherever I can get it. And so being able to kind of plow ahead anyway, knowing that I'm onto something, I had my family support. I'm not going to say that. They're all super supportive and all proud of me with everything that I've done. And even just that littlest bit of suspicion about whether or not there's really a future in what I'm doing, and being concerned for me, maybe that I'm taking unnecessary risks with my career, my family, and everything. That kept me from diving in head first and just really go. It did hold me back for a while.
I
And
can understand. Yeah.
fortunately, the COVID stuff, when I was working in the aerospace industry, all of the changes and everything that were going on in our culture and in the workplace and everything, it just, kind of pushed me, to force me to go all full time with this business. And I just haven't looked back since. But
It's an interesting correlation because a lot of the entrepreneurs I've talked to have a similar story
yeah.
where they feel drawn to an opportunity and they think there's an opportunity to be there.
Mhm.
I can 100% relate.
Yeah.
I ran as a side gig doing 3D printing out of the closet and out of the kids' playroom
I
for
love
3
it.
years.
Yeah, I love that, man.
And I wouldn't have done it on my own
Yeah.
until the good Lord kind of kicked me in a certain
Mhm.
direction.
Yeah.
So it sounds like very similar, huh?
No doubt. No doubt. Yeah. being married, having 6 kids, having a job that I really love. I love the aerospace stuff. So
I know for me, it was a lot of the responsibility with the family and thinking insurance. And I can't
yeah, yeah,
walk away from this more security.
yeah,
But at the same time, I would argue now there's way more security in what we've been able to provide here. Would
right.
you?
Oh yeah, I would say there's kind of a cultural idea of safety that I think is probably actually pretty harmful because it's mostly in a, but obviously
Yeah,
there's so many ways in which, obviously be wise, make plans, prepare for the worst, and all that, of course. But ultimately, like really ultimately, like, you want to talk about it in like the most basic sense, philosophically, your safety is an utter illusion. At any moment, your life could be required of you,
yeah,
and the best laid plans are not going to help you to avoid. So obviously, there's a type of security that we need to have that can really really empower you to take risks.
yeah.
Not to be irresponsible,
Yeah,
but
to take calculated.
yeah, but
Yeah,
to understand how even just the normal everyday working of things, like how you gain knowledge and insight and everything. Like, I know it sounds cliche. My brother just sent me a text message, no pain, no gain. I know that's a simple statement, but if you really want to consider that, like I'm always reminding my kids that you want, like, what do you want? Whatever it is that you want, you want to be strong.
yeah,
You want to be influential, you want to have money, you want to be a good person or whatever it is,
yeah,
anything that you endeavor to do, name it, you're going to have to do hard things.
yeah,
You're going to have to make sacrifices. You're going to have to learn to love, not to be a masochist, to love pain or adversity or
yeah,
whatever, but just understanding the relationship between pain or adversity and growth and gain, like to just really love it and press into it rather than avoiding it all the time. And obviously, there's easier ways to learn things and harder way to learn. Like going into the Air Force as kind of a foolish kid, I took the hard route, learning things the hard way, making mistakes and learning from them rather than just like listening to wise counsel and traditional wisdom, having to
yeah.
just kind of be knocked down. And that's the hard way rather than humbling yourself. But yeah, I would say, yeah, this idea of safety can be harmful. It can hold you up. It can paralyze you and
Mhm.
everything. And but also having that sort of, I like to think of myself as a bit of a country boy. I'm definitely not a living picture of the Hank Williams country boy cancer song, but I do have that kind of that mentality in the back of my
It's back there
mind.
a little bit.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, that sort of just, I don't know. Whenever you go through some stuff, you've been through some hard times or whatever. Even that was another one to touch on a little bit with the Air Force experience, but just going through survival school, going through SEER school in Washington, eating bugs, whatever, and like, being eventually tortured,
yeah,
for some time, and learning, just I don't know. It's like what I've told my kids about, like maybe being afraid of fighting or something, or getting into a fight or something. Like my pastor told this story once about a friend of his who basically got involved in some sort of controversy, and he gets punched by a guy, knocked out, just falls flat, and then it all blows over and everything. And he says, but after that, he was like a terror, to everyone, because he says, I've done been hit so hard.
Mhm.
I'm not afraid of nothing. I've already, I know what it's like,
Yeah,
right? To be knocked down, to be hit hard. It's not all that bad. I'm making it out to be much worse than it really is.
yeah.
So now what does somebody, a strong guy have
You've
over me?
taken that power, that authority,
Right.
that fear.
Right. And so that's like on the topic and the theme of safety, like what's the worst thing that can be taken from you, your life? Well, do you have any security in that area? And man, if you do, that can really, and not just your life, but even within whatever it is, your finances or your way of life, or whatever, or maybe your pride, even, which is a big one for me.
Yeah.
Like I want to live life with dignity as much as possible. But all of those things, if you can have some security in there, and it's really going to be grounded in your worldview, and really just not being small minded, being able to wrap your mind around the whole thing, like what's the worst that can happen, and am I okay with that? And if so, why? Strengthen your resolve and take risks, go and do the big things.
So that's I would say, a perfect segue to one of the questions I always like to ask entrepreneurs. And what's the hardest thing that you just never anticipated
Mhm.
about entrepreneurship?
Man, so like so many things come to mind, and I know that I'm probably not going to give the top one. So I'm just going to grab something out of the air here and say because this has been sort of a constant theme in my mind, at least recently. So it's one of the first things that comes to mind. But people are so important. If you can be tempted, or I mean, especially as a intelligent person or an innovator, a skillful person, right? Maybe you have all the technical abilities and everything to overemphasize those things, but those things aren't enough. I know innovative people who have great ideas, who I sympathize with. They just they're so confident that their ideas are so good that they're just going to sell themselves, and maybe they desire authenticity, perhaps, and unfortunately, what authenticity requires from them is that they don't change, and they're going to just be themselves and not kind of sell themselves and sell their product and everything. And unfortunately, that's just not the way the world works. You have to convince people, even no matter how good your ideas are. you know not only do you have to convince people to buy your product or service, and obviously there are honorable ways to do that and there are dishonorable ways, and that's all debatable, but being able to not only sell your product, but then also be somebody that people want to do business with. Generally people don't want to do business with bad people, and there are kind of things that transcend cultural differences and whatnot that are good practices and bad practices. And I really like your sort of disposition towards the industry. You have vested in the industry as a whole, and you're happy to see other people be successful. It's not a threat to you, and that's good for you. That's good for your business. If you want to say, if you're just a really selfish and greedy person and you want to make the most money, it seems counterintuitive. If somebody is displeased, they give you a 4-star review instead of a 5-star review to give them their money back. Well, what's my goal? To make the most amount of money, right? So you do everything you can to hold on to that or whatever, maybe burn bridges and whatnot. And I found and part of it came from pride, to be honest, so it's kind of it's been a mixed thing. But if somebody was just the littlest bit displeased with our service or with our product and everything, basically, I would give them their money back, and no matter how much it cost me. And that seems like, if you're short-sighted and everything, not good for business. But actually what happens is people know what you're all about.
Yeah.
What are you all about? What's most important to you and everything? I would rather be defrauded. I'd rather go bankrupt, than what it comes down to. I'm kind of serving my own, I don't know, it might be permissible, but I would say pride, or maybe it's not the best word, my own dignity. I want to do business with dignity. I don't want there to be a single person, if they bring charges against me, for there to be any real, whenever all the facts are laid out, it doesn't look really good on them. But there are a lot of practices, though, that even if the greedy person could really wrap their mind around it, they would know. You actually, it's much better for business. It's much better for business for you to do business honorably. For you to take care of people. I've always hated the customer's always right thing, because I feel like it's an oversimplification, I guess. They probably, a lot of times people come to me totally wrong, right? but but I guess just hearing the cliche, I just maybe didn't. You need to know the whole story, right? It's not that the customer is always right. It's that you do well, to be gracious with people, to be a little more understanding, and realize that they may need more information or whatever, that they may need a little help. They may be a little misinformed, and you can there's a way to be sort of gracious and kind, and generous with people and whatnot, to sort of turn them around. There's some people you can't turn around, but it's worth it. It doesn't seem good because it uses up your time. It especially if you're like a one-man band like me. I don't have a lot of time for customer interaction. I would like to, and I know that's something that we need to improve for sure. How we can make sure that the customer is seen and can have a relationship with us. But the other element is just like the human treating people like humans.
I've heard somebody put it this way: a customer can be wrong, but you can still treat them right.
Right, no doubt. Yeah, and that has been something, though. I guess back to the original question, that has been, I didn't place a high value or a high emphasis on people throughout most of my life. Kind of just been like a lone wolf kind of guy, very individualistic and independent, self-sufficient. I'm the guy at Home Depot, like struggling to get a piece of plywood in the back of my truck, and somebody's like, "Hey man, you need some help?" I'm like, "No, I got it." And he's like,
Yeah. A lot easier if I just helped you.
All right, yeah. Good luck, man. I'm the guy that's like, he's playing the drums and the saxophone and the harmonica or whatever, I don't know, with his whole body, and it's like, neat trick, man, but nobody wants to like listen to that on their commute to work, right? You know what I mean? But hey, cool, good for you. It's kind of it's really foolish now just looking back, just thinking that you can be, it's another illusion, self-sufficiency. It's not good that man should be alone. Not only that, but even if you don't have any reliance on your neighbor at all, even people who are proud of their self-sufficiency aren't truly, they're not watching this podcast. I know that.
Yeah.
They can't be. But so there's the reliance on your neighbor, but then not only that, just like your reliance on your daily bread, the maker of the foundation of the earth and sustainer of it, you cannot be self-reliant. So if you can kind of get rid of that probably helps. And it just took a long time, for me to, and so now it's like I'm learning on the job, and that's, if I could start all over again, if I could have one skill, if I could just choose one thing to be really good at rather than being good at a whole lot of stuff, especially technical things like I am, it would be in that one area where I'm especially weak, and that's with people. Knowing people, like understanding people and how to work with them, how to inspire people. How do you just having people work for you and being happy. I'm I can like I could work on an assembly line and listen to audio books and like get kind of into the nitty gritty details of my individual process and enjoy myself somehow. That's not normal. Most people aren't like that. How do you work with people who are different from you? And not only the people that you work with, but the customer. But I feel like, man, that's a superpower. You can do so much more if you know how to work with people. You don't have to have all the skills. You don't have to have all the technical knowledge and everything. You can trust other people. You can empower other people, equip them with the tools and whatnot to innovate and whatnot. And so I kind of set this business up to like really rely heavily on my skills and doing a whole lot of everything. And so that's probably been the biggest challenge. And if I could do it all over again, I mean, it's all been worth it. Even if this all went up in flames, if I started all over again, that'd be a much better understanding and a bit higher emphasis, not only on the value of people, but the importance and of knowing how to work with people and understanding people and sort of pressing your way into like relationships and doing well, doing right by people.
I couldn't agree more. And one of the things that I've had to learn over and over and over again is just because I can do something doesn't mean I should. There's other people that can possibly do it better, or my time is just spent better elsewhere.
Right. No doubt.
And so it's a hard lesson though, and I think you kind of suggested or mentioned it. It's almost a pride aspect.
No doubt, for sure.
And it's hard to bottle that up sometimes.
For sure.
But that's possibly another good segue to scaling. So as your business has grown, obviously there's new challenges that come into play. What's been the hardest or the biggest barrier to scaling your business?
Sure. I think, the first thing that comes to mind is probably not super helpful to like the industry as a whole, because this is kind of a unique situation or a unique way of doing business. But I know there's a lot of people out here like me who would rather like go into business like they're working full time, they start a side hustle sort of thing, and but are maybe sort of maintaining the sort of they don't want to be beholden to investors or to the bank or whatever, and so I've really been able to, this has been really important to me, but especially early on and having like a lot of, I would say, for lack of a better word, resistance from all the people around me who are normally supportive. So one of the ways that I've kind of bought down risk is by only doing things that I know I can afford, right? Even if I believe, man, there's this huge opportunity. If only I could just get someone on board with me, have an investor, give up a little equity or take out a big loan or whatever, I'm sure I can make it, I can make it work. However, being able to answer to, or thinking about that in the context of answering to my family and everything. And then not only that, I really love my job in aerospace and everything, and like, and we were doing just fine there,
Yeah.
and could have kept doing that, so why would I take on all this risk, especially when my ambitions are more related to innovation and not necessarily to being a monster of a business. Obviously I wouldn't mind any of that if I could do that while still emphasizing innovation and whatnot. But yeah, for something that's really been holding me back, to scale, is that I I have wanted to not take on investors and get big loans and whatnot. I took out my first big loan to buy an SLS machine recently, but did it very, very responsibly,
Hmm.
way down the line. And, you know, basically, I've placed such a high emphasis on my marriage and my relationship with my children. My children are homeschooled and everything. And I know that I can work a whole lot right now if this business stays in my house, and still have a healthy life.
Yeah.
So right now I can, man, I can lose, I can, get little sleep for extended periods of time, and and still manage all of my business stuff and everything, still do a lot of innovation and everything, still kind of do long painful design sessions, and you know what I mean, do that stuff, and still be able to manage my home life well. And I know that if we moved into a shop, I'm going to have to figure out a way to take a step back a little bit, to not have be investing so much time. uh, I know that some people can do that. I just don't believe I can do that and still maintain a healthy marriage
Do you think
and
there
healthy
will be
life.
a time?
I don't know. I go back to this saying all the time. Like whenever it comes to weakness, it's this is from the Bible, but it'd be better to cut off your hand or pluck out your own eye, essentially, than keep putting yourself in a situation to be tempted whenever you recognize that you're weak. Like that's not ideal. That's like plan B. Plan A is, grow up, toughen up, do what's right. So it's
Yeah.
not necessary.
Right.
And so I've kind of come by a lot of these things the hard way. I'm kind of learning on the job and everything, right? And I know that if I could do things all over again, there's probably a way that with my mind set on the future and where I know we're going to be, I would start preparing for that early on, rather than setting the business up to where basically in order for me to maintain things always have to be the way they are now,
Yep.
and so it's going to require in the meantime for me to do a lot of different things. And that wasn't very forward thinking of me. Like I said, though, when I started the business, I had no intention at all of making it. And there was times, working a full-time job. And then when business is really picking up, especially during the holidays, where I'm getting overwhelmed with home life or whatever, and one of these things got to go. Which one is it? And I've thought about closing my business down. One time, I just like took down like 1/3 of my products, like the biggest selling stuff. And during that time, we started getting tons of emails.
Saying where to
Yeah,
go.
yeah.
Yeah.
And you want to do right by all these people, right, who kind of built your business. And so you want to respond. And I'm putting a bunch of time in anyway,
Yeah.
but now it's time that I'm not enjoying,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so what I did, I had this great idea, like just with the open source mindset and everything, and sort of naive, I took all my files for those products, and I made it to where folks can download them. I gave them an opportunity to like make a donation or something, to the business, to be supportive of what I'm doing,
Yeah.
the work that I'm doing. At the time, it was more like a hobby than a business. And and then I made it to where they just had to agree to like a simple Creative Commons license. I like copied and pasted from Thingiverse,
Yeah.
and yeah, somebody downloaded all those designs and started a new business. So
Kidding.
yeah, they're still in business today, but it's a drop in the bucket now. But anyways, so that I ended up shutting that down, whatever, and decided, okay, that's not an option, that really was like a knife in the heart,
I think every entrepreneur would be lying to themselves if they didn't at least contemplate shutting down or
Yeah,
turning away at some point.
that's good to hear. I'm really not in touch. I'm really not in touch with the community, the entrepreneurial community, and everything, but no, that's honestly, it's good to hear, because I wonder, you know, I don't know. Sometimes I wonder how much of it is just me being weak, or
Yeah.
if this is just something that's just common to business owners, just a phase you go through. I have heard from other business owners, you know, of like certain benchmarks where things start to get more comfortable
Right.
and whatnot. And of course, I am very reluctant to believe, yeah, you hit the 2 million mark, and things start to change a little bit with it,
Yeah.
because there's like it's like buying a small home. Well, you buy a tiny home, you still have a bathroom, you still have a kitchen, you still have an air conditioner, you still have these major expenses, a roof and
Yeah.
everything, right? A foundation. And so basically you're paying a lot more per square foot, and there's just certain costs associated with purchasing home, and so it's kind of like that with a business when you're small, from what I understand anyway. I'm not on the other side of that yet, so I can't say that with the utmost confidence. But from what I'm hearing from other folks, from what I'm picking up on, it sounds like, and you would know, I'm sure, you probably are getting to be on the other side of it. But it seems like there's a high cost that's associated with doing business at a certain scale, and that cost becomes a much smaller part of your product, individual product
Yeah.
cost or service cost or whatever, the bigger you get.
What I've perceived is the challenges don't get easier; they just
Mhm.
change.
Yeah,
So
I could
it's,
see
I
that.
think about how we did things 3, 4, 5 years ago. We had
Mhm.
2 or 3 manual blasters.
Mhm.
We didn't have the volumes to do on the multi-jet fusion
Sure.
SOS side of things. So we blasted everything by hand. And when we think back to what we were doing with the resources we were doing it, it's like, wow, how did we ever get through that? Now we
Mhm.
have other resources that make our day-to-day lives a little bit easier in that
Sure.
circumstance. But that means with the volumes that we have, then there's a new problem that comes into play.
Yeah, yeah.
So and that's just my personal experience, but
Sure.
it's not that those challenges ever go away, and the other new factors come in and
Sure.
just fill that void real fast.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah, well, and I'm kind of in a niche industry too. Like with firearms, there's certain, like, you know, like if you want liability insurance or something, I'm firearms adjacent.
Hmm.
So yeah, liability insurance for my company is, 12,000 is cheap. 12,000 a year is cheap,
Wow.
and so, but that's not going to go up exponentially or something.
Right.
The more revenue I'm doing,
Mhm.
so right now it's kind of a big percentage of, are obviously larger than I'd like anyway, percentage of our overall expenses of just doing business,
Yeah.
and so it is with a bunch of other elements as well.
So as you scale, that becomes a little bit smaller,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
then there's other factors. Yeah.
no doubt, no doubt.
So what do you think is one of the most unique challenges? I mean, you kind of mentioned your industry, but specific to your industry.
Sure. Man, uh, I would say one thing for sure is like, the political. I know there are folks listening to this on all ends of the political spectrum, but it really doesn't matter. The firearms industry and firearms adjacent, has a lot going against them. I can't market or advertise on any Alphabet platform, Microsoft platform, any major social media platform. So there are still ways where you can share information. It's not necessarily a workaround. It's just you don't have the same tools available. I can't like pay for an ad.
Handcuffed.
Yeah, yeah. And if you go and search for one of our products on Google, there are all kind of tools that you can use, Google Suite tools, where you can have basically like a spreadsheet or a Google, I forget what they're called, like a Google sheet where you have all of your product information and pictures and all of that. So whenever somebody searches, it actually shows a picture of your product with like an add to cart sort of thing or whatever, the price and a short bullet point description, just like you would see in my store. So it's almost like you can go straight to buying right from Google.
Yeah.
Well, you can't do that if you're firearms related, or if you're, I don't know what, anything illegal or anything highly regulated, or that they deem is not, safe, essentially. So yeah, so that's one really unique thing. I get, sort of lumped in with the firearms industry, which I don't necessarily have a big problem with, but because it's really taught me a lot, and if I ever start another business, I just feel like it's going to be like going from the oil and gas industry going into aerospace.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I had it. You got a lot working against you. If it's really competitive and everything, like what's going to set you apart from what's going to get your product before the eyes of your customer. You don't have the same tools available at your disposal, and especially with an online business.
Digital age.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, you have to be innovative, or I don't know if there are workarounds or what, but yeah, that's been challenging. Like I'm always banned, or not banned, but shadow banned on
Yeah.
social media. It's like I post, like, I got my family working with me, definitely very, very responsible and everything, and not racy content or anything like that. But you just post sometimes a picture of a black or gun looking, and that's enough to trigger the algorithm or whatever, and then your content can't be showed to people who are not following you. You get a little warning on your page and everything. So that, I would say, that's a really unique issue. But it's not just with marketing; it's also with lots of other things. I've had bank accounts frozen. I've had payment processors and everything in our agreements after policy changes and whatnot. I've had what's another one that just happened recently? I'm drawing a blank. I had general liability insurance,
Oh yeah.
and I didn't read all of their policy stuff, but I did give them all my information and the website and all of that. They had an opportunity to see what we do, and I guess they're reviewing my account after a year or something like that. And somebody saw gun stuff and was like, "Oh no," and they shut us down. Well, you need to have insurance to work with dealers or big, reputable companies and everything are going to require that you have or product liability insurance. But until I find another option, that's not going to work. I'm not going to be able to work with dealers, and so lots of things like that. Even just exporting products and everything. There's so many laws to know. I don't know every. It's basically, I just have to try to send something somewhere and find out. Oh, okay, yeah, we can't ship things to Hungary. Yeah.
It's impossible.
Yeah.
To know every rule and regulation where you
Right.
conduct business.
And there are some things that are just really interesting and nuanced, like in the Netherlands, I believe it is. If you have a feature on an air gun or a replica or whatever that's meant to make it look like a firearm, but it doesn't serve like some sort of utilitarian or practical purpose, like for it to function, then it's not allowed. So yeah, if you put like a fake magazine well or something on an air gun, and it looks like it's made to accept like a firearm, even if it does, it's just they could deem it a prohibited product.
Wow.
And something that couldn't be imported there. So if I have a company that wants to place a huge, tens of thousands of dollar order and import a bunch of stuff, I was like right on the edge of that before they asked me a question. Hey, does this serve a purpose? And I was like, no, it's just to look cool. And they're like, oh, okay, we can't get those. Yeah. Yeah. We can't get those. Yeah. They're going to, could you imagine, I take their money, do tens of thousands of dollars of parts. We give it to the export company and everything. They ship it. It gets there and customs says, nah. Yeah. And then and now with this sort of approach to business that I've had, where I can't, in good conscience, keep this company's money, even if maybe I did consider it to be on them to know their own laws and everything before importing this stuff. That puts me in a really bad situation. So luckily, it didn't go that far, but it does cause you some pause with anything, and it just that you always have that in the back of your mind, like you have all these things working against you, and then there's the political landscape as well, and always the constant threat of new regulations or laws and whatnot. So that's definitely one really unique thing that, a unique challenge, I guess, in our particular industry for sure.
So kind of, if I could geek out here a little bit.
Oh yeah.
On the 3D printing side.
Let's do it.
Gotta maybe go there a little bit. So what printer did you start with?
I started with, what was that company? I think y'all have them.
Flash.
Yeah. Forge the dual head.
Creator Pro.
Yeah. That was the first one.
Is that still running?
No. I think I think you guys have them to where you can like run super speed or something, right?
Yeah.
I was running like, to get good parts, 25 millimeters a second or something like
slow,
that. Yeah. And then I eventually, I was doing PLA at first. I had no idea what I was doing, but yeah. But yes, I was doing PLA. And I switched to these other machines. They're another Chinese machine, FL Sun. You had one, I think I saw.
I had something similar.
Yeah. But yeah, one of these Delta, a Delta machine, and that could print really fast, and it was fine as long as I was doing PLA. And I eventually started getting into ABS on that Delta printer, and I could get away with some parts in ABS, and I was printing a lot faster and everything, and started having issues that I couldn't see on the outside. It's just I've shipped something, it seemed fine,
Yeah.
post process and everything, ship it to a customer, and then like I don't know, like a butterfly flies by and it cracks. I don't know, and or according to their story anyway. But anyways, eventually I moved into Keydis. They're called Keydis. It's a Quidi.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and the X pluses, I think, are our main machine. That's whenever I had like 40 machines running 24/7.
40 machines.
Yeah, and I actually had 20 more in storage too that were just kind of backups if one went down, because I didn't like just if I had one going down, I felt like I might as well just do a whole bunch of them all at once. We'll have like a
Yeah.
repair session or something. That's kind of the way I do it. So I keep these other backups in storage. But
So how did you handle power?
yeah, breaking the law. No, I'm kidding. Not really. But yeah, it did look like we were like mining Bitcoin or something.
Yeah.
We keep our garage doors open. That's the biggest thing for us is fumes, in the garage, printing ABS, especially polycarbonate as well. And then those machines they say they filter, but it's like, it's like one of those old school AC filters that just like only captures like, large particles. But anyways, so yeah, we'd have to leave the garage doors open and everything. But yeah, for power, I just ended up, we had to upgrade our service, and then we ended up having an electrician come out and running the individual circuits. Fortunately, they advertise, like 6 amps or something like that. But like we actually measured the machine to figure out like
once
to try
to
to
run steady state, it's a lot lower than that.
to sort of maximize, because you can deal with peaks, right, on a 20 amp breaker or whatever. It can temporarily go over that. But anyways, so yeah, I had somebody help me out, and do all the calculations and everything, and figure out that we could put like 6 3D printers on a circuit or something like that, and then having the UPS systems helps as well, the backups.
Yep.
But yeah, and then eventually we switched though from those to Bamboo Labs. We just recently switched to Bamboo Labs printers, and they're, really
they live up to the hype.
Oh yeah. Yeah, for sure. I waited. I wasn't an early adopter. I was real suspicious of all of it, before I finally switched. But
when you're running production at that volume, going 20 or 30% faster means 20 or 30% more product.
No doubt, no doubt. And yeah, and it's not just the speed, but just like how many successful or how many prints are successful, or whatever, like that's a big one as well. Just audit little things, like that make the workflow better. There are some things I don't like about the Bamboo Labs printers, that I like more about the Keydis printers, but overall, yeah, it's been much better. I've been able to cut down the amount of 3D printers that we run. I got rid of a whole bunch of them recently, so to make room for our selective laser sintering machine and all.
So that's interesting. So obviously you used our services, mostly powder bed fusion, and now you're looking at you already acquired an SLS machine, right? So where do you think the industry is going to go in that regard? Do you think that's going to?
Yeah, I don't know. It looks really exciting though, wherever wherever it's going to go. But I think we recently talked about this on a little bit. But that Micronics company doing their Kickstarter, that was very very successful, and they already have a bunch of their machines running. I really like the way that they're approaching this. It seems like it was very very well thought out, and just even if they're not able to deliver all that they're promising. If they came in at $10,000 or whatever, it would still be disruptive, no doubt. But I am realizing something now that I have this Formlabs machine, and I have much more respect for you guys. The post processing is key. That's key.
I'm chuckling, but because most people don't realize that how much work goes in on the back end. I always say printing the part is easy, but turning it into a good part is really hard.
Right. Yeah. And then just a little, things that I just wouldn't have even thought about, like I don't have the blast, fuse blast yet. I'm supposed to be getting that around July 8th. So it's going to be a bit before I can actually be producing parts, but I already have some parts in hand, and I've messed with them a little bit, and then really got to thinking about certain things, like I have an advantage that you guys probably don't, is I can design the parts,
to fit to that machine.
Yeah. And so you have parts, from all over the place, probably have, parts that aren't ideal for that process maybe, or whatever, and you still have to try to make it work. And it's probably very, very difficult to predict, the amount of post processing and everything that's going to go in certain parts, like hollow parts. I've never had any other companies make suppressors for us just because of liability. I wouldn't want to put that on anyone. I'm very comfortable with it or whatever, but if same companies that's making, say, firearms, non-NFA firearms parts or whatever, and making air gun suppressors, I could understand why folks wouldn't want to do that. So I've never had anybody do that. So I've always made them in house. But that was one of the first things I made on this Formlabs printer, and realized like that material, it doesn't want to come out of there, and just really trying to think. Like I was just thinking, like, okay, even if I'm going to blast it,
so you're talking about like an internal channel or something?
Yeah, like it's, you can't take it apart. So I was thinking, okay, maybe I just need to redesign them to where you can take them apart and I can easily get the powder out. Because just thinking about how much time, or labor is going to go into getting this part clean. You can't have any powder in there. Say if there's still the tiniest bit of powder in a crack or something like that, and then I dye it and all, and now it's kind of caked in there, and then over time it starts to dry out or something, and then somebody's shooting their air gun and there's back pressure, and then all of a sudden this white powder starts coming out of their breech, or or something like that. That's going to be an issue. They're going to think, well, first of all, I don't know what kind of damage that could do to their air gun, but not only that, but I'm sure they're not going to appreciate that very much. Just thinking, okay, how am I going to like be 100% sure that there's no more powder? I've started researching blower attachments, nozzles that have like a radial ports or something to stick into there, and I don't know. Like I'm already thinking, man, that could be a business. Maybe I need to start a second business making nozzles. Somebody's listening there. Do it. But anyways, I'm just thinking, worst case, for my business, I can say, okay, well, that's not going to work. It's too much post processing time, and I can redesign it to where it's a 3-part thing, that you thread together or whatever, and it's easier to get apart. And then on top of that, it has some advantages for the customer as well. So 2 birds with 1 stone, and but yeah, just thinking about the post processing thing, that's really got me thinking. Even thin sections, if you're going to put them into an automated, I was kind of relying on the automated blast cabinet thing to where I could just throw parts in there, set it, and walk away.
Right.
Well, that's not going to work for parts with thin sections that you need to be delicate with and whatnot. So, all kind of things I just never even would have thought about. I knew it was going to be like that when I got the machine, but
there's always that learning curve. And you can hear it 1,000, or at least I can hear something 1,000 times, but until I see it and experience it myself, that's when it finally clicks.
Yeah, for sure. I'm the same way. So yeah, a lot of that's occurring to me, and so I understand now how important that is, and I could see that being sort of one of the major hurdles. It seems like there needs to be more innovation in the less glorious aspect of powder, based additive manufacturing. With the post processing innovations in the post processing space. To really make it to where just anybody can start a business in their garage. That makes sense.
Absolutely. Well, I guess one final question. Mm-hmm. What is your favorite product in your product line?
Man, it's like when they ask, "What's your favorite kid?"
What's your favorite kid?
Yeah. I do have some that are particularly near and dear to my heart. Like I said, I'm like a self-taught, hillbilly engineer, YouTube engineer, right? And so it's been an advantage for me, really, because there are some concepts that are just, I imagine, are so basic. You learn about them in engineering school, whatever, and then you never think about them again, right? But I'm learning like where I have all these applications already, right? And then I learn for the first time, I think about collets. Like how does a collet work really? I'm a machinist by trade. I've touched collets, I've used collets. I see the application and everything, but I've never really thought about it from the perspective of, I'm a person who's finding pain points wherever they can and trying to apply, engineering principles or, take old ancient principles or whatever, and repackage them in a new and useful way. Right. And so just recently, like sometimes I go on kind of a kick, right. I went on a cam kick for a while, thinking about cams and how you can use them, but like for quick disconnect, this or that, right. For like a takedown rifle type of thing, right. Something that, and I was just thinking, man, you could just, cam lever the handguard, cam lever the stock, cam lever the grip. You just have cam levers all over, and then you can with additive manufacturing or with 3D printing, you can make a cam lever that's tucked away in a neat way or something,
Yeah.
right? That you might not do. We're all familiar with the probably with the hard, the off the shelf cam levers that you can buy. It's a certain size screw. It's got the little metal washer. It's got the PTFE thing to reduce friction, and the little handle. Well, that's not going to look good to throw a bunch of those all over a gun, right?
Yeah.
Well, with 3D printing, you can make something that sort of nests neatly in its locked position into the part, right? And so I was thinking, man, I could just hide it in the, this or that or whatever. I have all these neat little tucked away cam levers and just make it to where it's like pop a lever, slide it off, pop a lever, slide it off, and pack something into a case or whatever. So that's kind
Yeah.
of the way I'll get on I'll learn about cam levers. And this is like old news, to an engineer. Yeah, but for me,
Yeah.
I'm like, guys,
Yeah.
have you heard of cam levers? I would talk to a wall about cam levers if you would listen, But anyways, so all of a sudden, people will start seeing little prototypes of them come out with cam
Yeah.
lever on this thing or cam lever on that thing. Well, most recently, it was collets, thinking about ways that you can apply collets, and especially with making use of 3D printing. And I got my first. We're in the application process for a patent on. I've developed lots of things that I could have had patented already, but it's not really in keeping with the business, sort of the way I want to do business. Being able to design something on Thursday and have it for sale on Monday, patents are going to not be helped. Yeah. And then on top of that, desiring to be like as humble as possible and everything, sometimes you kind of underestimate how innovative or something is, and you don't realize until later. And it's like, man, you're already selling it, you can't patent it. So, but as soon as I developed this most recent product that uses a collet, it's so simple and so basic, and it's going to be really easy to write up the all the patent documents. But it's basically just I shouldn't mention it. I don't have the patent yet.
Understood. No obligation.
Yeah. But if you go and look at my account, my social accounts and everything, it's all on there. But anyways,
so this is gonna be a new product.
Yeah, this is going to be a new product, and it has implications for the firearms industry as well. So I'm not going to do the firearm stuff probably, but I might, if someone's interested, I could license it out or whatever. But I was really excited about that, and part of my excitement is sort of this like, seeing like the advantages of sort of coming from like humble roots, I guess. You know what I mean? Coming from humble roots, like I know that whenever I learn about college and like I'm coming from a place of just like a genuine interest in engineering principles and concepts, and and then already have all these applications, so these places for it to fit in. I didn't have that in my public education. You learn everything in a box, right? And you have no idea how this stuff is applied, and it seems useless to you. You don't know until you're a man trying to provide for your family, or and how useful all that stuff would have been if you'd paid attention. But anyway, so now I have I see all the places this stuff fits in, so it's like just in time, really. It's really just in time, and that's been a strength to me. And even whenever I was working at NASA, like kind of feeling like I don't deserve to be here, like I'm way in over my head. These people are way smarter than me. Having that kind of mindset, like I really want to make myself valuable. I really want to, as soon as possible, just, see what I can do to make myself valuable. There's just simple things. Like they have this pretty much like giant handbook of tedious knowledge about a particular project. And, a lot of people are unwilling to read that document. But for me, it was kind of a strength, feeling unworthy to be there, feeling like I'm in over my head, out of my depth or whatever. I would like read this document and try to understand it to the best of my abilities, and mostly just because of my background and everything. And then we're in a design meeting, like we're all bouncing ideas off of one another, and I'm able to come and say, I'm like the least educated person there, but I read the manual, so I could say, I say, hey, actually, guys, that sounds like a really good idea, but the manual says blah blah in chapter this and subsection, whatever, and then they're like, okay, yeah, I didn't know it said that. It requires the pressurized glove doesn't allow tactile feedback, so you need to make switches to where they're kind of hard to actuate. And so you actually have to make it to where it requires 5 pounds of force or something like that to overcome the switch. Yeah. And I had wise counselors when I came in who told me there's a way we do things, and instead of blowing it off or whatever, understand that it's there for a reason and try to embrace it. And that's exactly what I did. I tried to make myself do the stuff that other people were unwilling to do, make myself useful. And before you know it, they're like, okay, Terry's the DCU switch guard guy.
Awesome, Terry. Well, I really appreciate your time today. I mean, we could probably go on all day.
Oh yeah.
This is fun stuff. And I think we got a lot to relate about. I guess just to conclude, if you want to shout out to your website or how your customers can get a hold of you.
Yeah, for sure. If you're interested in our products, I mean, there's probably a lot of folks that are more here for the business part, but yeah, you can go to our website. It's buck-rail.com. If you're into firearms or air guns, surely you can at the very least appreciate some of the stuff that we put out. I have a blog post on there too that kind of illustrates some of or pulls back the curtain with the design process and everything too. So there's actually a little bit for everyone there. And but yeah, feel free to check us out. And thanks for tuning in.
Awesome. Thanks, Terry.
Good talking with you.
Yes, sir.